くお願いいたします。では、なぜアメリカの大学院に留学することを私たちがお勧めをするのかという話なんですが、ここにざっと、皆さん見ていただけると分かるようにいろんな理由があるんですけれども、皆さん、大学院に留学された方がおっしゃるのが、質の高い教育水準というのと、教育の施設、ラボとかですね、そういったものが大変充実しているということで、アメリカを選ぶ方もたくさんいらっしゃいます。あとですね、あとアメリカの大学院への留学をすることで得られる能力、スキルは何かということなんですが、ここにたくさん書いてあるとは思うんですけれども、皆さん口を揃えておっしゃるのが、世界中に友達ができるということです。最近ですね、私がお話をされた大学院留学経験者の方、現在アメリカの大学で工学を教えていらっしゃる方なんですけれども、アメリカの大学院で友達になった世界中から来た大学院生と友達になりまして、今もその交流が続いていて、仕事のこととかいろんなことを話したり、支え合って励まし合って、そして時にはライバルとしてやっていけていることがとても支えになっているというふうにおっしゃっておりました。では、私たち EducationUSA というところは何をしているのかというと、皆様が自力で留学をする際に必要な情報等をこちら私たちから皆様に提供する、それからアメリカの大学院とのコネクションをですね、少しでも皆様のために何かしら提供できればと思ってやっております。アメリカの、EducationUSA というセンターなんですけれども、アメリカ大使館、領事館にあります。そして、私たち EducationUSA に関しましては、大使館広報部、の職員とフルブライトジャパンとの共同の運営になっております。そしてですね、やはり留学というと情報を集めることが大事になってきます。私たち、大使館としてですね、NPO の団体と協力体制があったりとかするんですけれども、大学院留学に関してはエクスプレインという団体がございまして、こちらの団体のウェブサイトを一度見ていただけるとわかるかと思うんですが、経験者の方とつながることができて、もちろん経験者の方の日記、ブログを読むこともできるんですが、コミュニティがあります。コミュニティに、何か質問をするとすぐどなたかが返事をくれたりとか、つながったりすることができますので、ぜひ一度見てみてください。それから、皆様、今月ですね、フルブライトジャパンの方で2025年の募集要項が出たりしております。奨学金に関して、フルブライトの奨学金に関して知りたい方、よろしければこちらの QR コードを読んでいただきたいと思います。また、フルブライトジャパンのウェブサイト、メインページに行ってスクロールダウンをすると経験者の方のお話とかもありますので、ぜひ一度見てみてください。それから、EducationUSA では不定期ではあるんですけれども、インスタグラムライブをしております。Meet the US College Reps ということで、アメリカから来ているアメリカの大学の担当者の方々と一緒に、20分ではありますが、インスタグラムをやっておりまして、皆様からの質問にその場で答えたりとかしています。3月の8日金曜日3時15分からですね、ワシントンステートユニバーシティから人をお招きして、大学院のプログラムについてお話を伺います。これ全部、このインスタグラムに関しては全て日本語で行いますので、日本語で質問をしていただいて、日本語でお答えすることが可能です。ぜひ、私たちの、アカウント、EduUSA Japan をフォローしていただければ、3月の8日に皆さんにそこでお会いできるかと思います。さて、駆け足で申し訳ないんですが、EducationUSA に関しての質問は以上です。本日のウェビナーの登壇者をご紹介します。今日はですね、Stevens Institute of Technology, Dina, hello.
Hello.
はい、それからもう一方ですね、The University of Alabama, Andrew. 今日はお二人にお願いしようと思います。Let me hand over to you.Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you very much for having us here.
Well, Andrew, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm just switching to sharing our slides.
Please.
Go. All right.
That's great. Thank you.
So, Dina, you want to go first with introductions?
Sure. Thank you all for having us here. To my dear students that are in the virtual Zoom room with us, it is wonderful to be here with you. I'm Dina Escaros. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions at Stevens Institute of Technology.
All right, and I'm Andrew Goodliff. I am Associate Dean in the Graduate School of the University of Alabama over admissions, recruitment, and the all-important student funding. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today.
So let's talk a little bit. Essentially, there are so many different universities in the United States. And I think you as the student, one of the most important things that you will have to do is really do research as to the type of university that you would like to join in the United States. You're going to find that there are different types of universities. You have public universities, you have private universities, you have STEM designated universities such as Stevens Institute of Technology. And of course, essentially a STEM designated program in the United States is essentially a program that concentrates on the science, technology, engineering, and math. The important part about the STEM designated programs in the United States is that it offers you, the student, the ability to work through an internship in the United States post your graduation. So normally, if a program is not a STEM designated program, you will receive a 12 months optional practical training, which is OPT for short. And then if it is a STEM designated program, you will end up continuing that for an additional 24 months on the same visa, which is your student visa. Andy? So how do you choose a STEM designated program in the United States? First and foremost, what I will tell you is that it is important to identify what is really important to you. What are your interests? What are your career goals? Essentially, when you're doing an undergraduate degree, it is your first step into higher education. But when you're doing a master's degree or essentially a PhD after that, you're really doing a deep dive into an area of study. So you will want to sort of figure out, what are my career goals going forward? Is it something that essentially, what do I want to do once I graduate? And that will help you sort of identify the type of programs that you would be interested in. As we mentioned before, it is very important for you to do your research on academic universities in the United States. Figure out what each university offers. Do a deep dive into the academic catalog of each university in the programs that you are interested in. Keep in mind that perhaps in Japan, some programs are named differently from programs that are in the United States. So do understand the differences between these programs. What I will tell you that oftentimes in the United States, you will find that students have the ability to move across career paths, which means that, for example, let's take computer science as an example. You find students who do not necessarily have a computing background oftentimes want or have an interest of getting into another area of study like computer science. So you will find that oftentimes a lot of universities will offer sort of pathway programs into a new area of study at the graduate level as well. So you need to sort of think about, okay, how do I use my undergraduate degree? How do I use my graduate degree? How do I use any job experience that I have to sort of get into the career that I'm interested in? Review the program curriculum. You will find program curriculums in the academic catalogs of all universities, and those are mostly on the websites of the university. Now, determining an accreditation of a STEM designated program, you will be able to find that if you cannot find it on the university website, which you should be able to find, you will be able to do your research to make sure that this program is indeed a STEM designated program. In the United States, our programs have what is called a zip code, which is CIP. And the zip code almost sort of tells the government as to what type of program this is. And so STEM designated programs also have the appropriate zip codes. Now, one of the decisions that you will need to make is figuring out location and the campus environment of the universities that you are choosing. Do you want to be in an urban environment? Do you want to be in a close community, which means that in a campus setting? So you have institutions such as NYU, for example, which I know many of you perhaps know. Their campus is not necessarily an enclosed campus. And on the other hand, you have institutions such as Stevens Institute of Technology, where you have gated community. And while outsiders can come into this community, it is indeed an enclosed space for the students to be in. Now, schedule an appointment to speak with admissions advisors. Also at the graduate level, I would recommend that you take the opportunity to email faculty members from programs of your interest. You will often find that program information and faculty information and contact information is always on the website of the university. Reach out to the faculty members, reach out to the admissions office. Make sure that you do talk to them about your interests and what you hope to do and accomplish out of your graduate degree. So one of the things I often tell my students at the graduate level, if you are interested in getting involved in research, certainly reach out to the admissions office first. But you will often find that admissions offices at the graduate level can also put you in touch perhaps with faculty members who are doing research in your area of study. Now, of course, each university is different, and you will find that larger universities are not often the same as smaller size universities. So once you talk to the admissions office, they will be able to guide you into the right way of doing things within their own university. So when students email faculty members or when they email admissions advisors or admissions officers, I often tell them that at the graduate level, it is very important for you to be particular as to essentially what you want to do with this degree that you want to receive from our university. What are you hoping to achieve? What is your background of study? Do you perhaps need additional advice on how to cross over different careers? So these are all things that you should mention in the email when you're setting up an appointment with the institutions that you look forward to speaking with, so that we can learn or know how to properly guide you accordingly. Now, additionally, I think it is very important to speak with current students and speak with alumni of a university. Alumni and current students will be able to tell you so much more about the university and about their experience, and you can certainly do that. One of the great ways I tell my students that they should connect with alumni is perhaps through LinkedIn. Go onto LinkedIn, find alumni from the universities that you are interested in attending, or that you might have interest in attending. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Let them know that you are interested in perhaps pursuing their career path. Also on LinkedIn, you will be able to find the programs that they graduated from, and you will be able to see the career path that they have taken. Where did they start? Where did they finish up? These are all important questions for you when you're determining which program and which university is right for you. Connect with them and do schedule time to speak with them and let them know that you're interested in getting information about the university and their alma mater that they have attended. Yeah? Andy? So preparing for a strong graduate application. This is very important because a lot of times as an international student, while you will have the ability to perhaps see us while on the road, I am actually away from the United States at this point in time. So I am out recruiting and meeting with new prospective students on the road, which is always so wonderful to see the students face to face. But as international students, you will find that a lot of times you are doing this virtually. You are connecting with the universities via Zoom. You are connecting with the universities via telephone. You can schedule appointments with the universities. So you will need to sort of figure out how to present a strong graduate application and make sure that it is a complete indication of who you are as an applicant. One thing I will tell you is gather your material early. You all know that every single university has deadlines that they follow. These deadlines will be posted on the website. Now, keep in mind that some universities will tell you that these deadlines are that they use rolling admissions, but they have preferred deadlines. You, as the student, you should make sure that you should always have the deadlines noted down and make sure that you are gathering all your information early. Do not wait until last minute. Many of the universities will require you to present recommendation letters. Recommenders often need time to write your recommendation letters. So never reach out to your recommenders and say, my application is due tomorrow. How can you please provide me with a recommendation letter? Make sure that you give them ample time. Now, all these applications that we now have for the graduate study are all online. You will be submitting your application online. So you can start your application little by little very early, and you do not necessarily need to submit it all in one sitting. Give yourself time to think about how you want to present your application and what the university is asking for. Now, business students are not often presenting the same material as students that are going into engineering or into the sciences. If you are doing research or if you're interested in doing research, you need to provide some information at the graduate level if you have done prior research, for example. Now, the statement of purpose is incredibly important for me as someone who perhaps reviews applications, because the statement of purpose is your way of telling me, why do you want Stevens Institute of Technology? What is it about you that will make a good addition for our university? But what is it about Stevens also that will make a good university for you? Highlight your achievements. Let me know in your statement of purpose or in your resume what you have done, where you have been, all the extracurricular activities that you have done in your life. Oftentimes, universities are looking for a well-rounded individual to join their academic community. Let us know, what is it about you that will make you a good fit for our universities? And again, it is very important that the university is also a good fit for you. So perhaps if you're a liberal arts student, if you're a student that is interested in politics, you're not going to be applying to universities such as Stevens Institute of Technology, because we really do concentrate on programs that are the sciences, the engineering, the math, the business. Also, we talked about recommendation letters briefly. It is important that you choose recommenders that are able to speak to your academic integrity, to how good you are as a student. Now, also keep in mind that some universities at the graduate level do not want recommendation letters from your friends. They want recommendation letters from your faculty members. They want recommendation letters from previous employers. If you've done research, have you conducted research with a faculty member? Perhaps ask that faculty member to submit the recommendation letter on your behalf. It is important that recommendation letters can speak to exactly who you are as an individual. Will you make a good fit for this university, or will you make a good fit for this master's degree or PhD? Keep in mind that some programs will require interviews. So for example, a lot of business programs, such as the MBA programs, they oftentimes require interviews. Now, keep in mind that not all business programs are always STEM designated. At universities such as Stevens Institute of Technology, our STEM programs are all our business programs are all STEM designated programs. But you do have to do your research to make sure that those business programs perhaps and those MBAs are STEM designated programs. So prepare for your interview. Make sure that We do not want a student coming into the interview to sound like a robot, okay? So we want you to have a candid conversation with us. We want you to have an honest conversation and answer our questions freely. This is also a good way for you through these interviews to bring out to the interviewer things about you that are perhaps not highlighted or that you want to highlight a little extra in your application. Make sure you proofread your application. No spelling mistakes allowed. Make sure that you have the name of your university well written and your GPA properly indicated. Make sure that when you're adding your email address, or make sure that when you're adding any information in your application, that it is accurate information and that you have proofread your application. So take your time to do that, because this is incredibly important. The last thing you want a reviewer at the graduate level to see is spelling mistakes in your statement of purpose. It is just not a good indication of who you are. And as we said before, meet deadlines. Even though some universities might have rolling admission, you as an international student, it is important for you to follow the preferred deadlines of all universities, because they do take into account the visa process. They do take into account when you need to submit perhaps all the information to the consulates, or to when to sign up for the visa interview. So make sure that you apply early and make sure that you meet deadlines. Andy? And now I pass it on to my colleague who is going to speak to you about how to pay for your graduate school. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was all absolutely amazing advice. So I hope everyone really listened to that very, very carefully. But again, you know, the big thing is, how do you pay for this grad school thing? So the good news, and so a lot of this is going to vary by university. So I'm going to invite Dina to sort of jump in and add if needs be. At least at the University of Alabama, a lot of our STEM programs are better funded than a lot of other programs. And especially in the sciences and engineering, a lot of that is because a lot of students are funded by external grants. So my background is in STEM. I was actually funded by external grants all throughout my time in university. And so you're going to be in a pretty good place in terms of STEM. And again, it can vary by university. So what sort of form does this funding take? So at a place like the University of Alabama, a lot of our students, and I'm talking really here about the master's and the doctoral students, are funded through graduate assistantships. And most universities in the US are going to have some form of graduate assistantship. So these typically take two forms. So you have the teaching assistantship, so the graduate teaching assistantship, or GTA, which is where you might be helping teach a class. And the form that takes could be different. You could actually be leading the class. You could be just grading. You could be leading a lab section. But somehow you're helping out with the instructional mission of the university. The other main type of graduate assistantship is a graduate research assistantship. And so that's the sort of one I mentioned at the start. That's where you may be helping a professor with a research project. Very often the money for this comes from external funding. At least at the University of Alabama, if you get offered some form of assistantship, these typically include a tuition scholarship. For us, it's 100% tuition scholarship, a stipend to cover living expenses. And then we also cover various college fees, that sort of thing. And also, very importantly, in the US, we cover health insurance. So it's very important to have good health insurance coverage. So one of the questions you may be asking is, how do I get one of these assistantships? Well, the answer to that is going to vary depending on the university and also within the university. So we have different departments that do it differently. And this is kind of the thing with grad school. Each of our departments, each of our programs works slightly differently, has slightly different requirements. If we look at our College of Engineering, a lot of that funding tends to come at the recommendation of individual faculty members. If we look at our College of Arts and Sciences and our science programs, that tends to come more as sort of a departmental decision in general, though that's a vast generalization. So Dina, how does that typically work at Stevens?
So at Stevens Institute of Technology, and you will find that this is different at every single university, just like my colleague said. At Stevens, what we do is that we will automatically consider you for a scholarship at the time you're submitting your application. So essentially at the master's level, you will automatically be considered for a scholarship. Now, after the scholarship is applied to your record, when we release your admission, we would release your admission along with your scholarship. Now, those scholarships at the master's level, for example, are usually based on merit, and they would be sort of offset towards your tuition. So if your tuition is $20,000 and you received a $10,000 scholarship, at our university, for example, we would apply half of that scholarship towards your first semester, half of that scholarship towards your second semester. That is at the master's level. Of course, at the PhD level, a lot of times, as my colleague was saying, these assistantships would pay full ride, essentially, for your tuition, your fees, and they would give you a stipend, and they would be up to 4 years. At Stevens, at the master's level, only students who are heavily involved in research and really are looking to go then after to PhD would then get a full assistantship, a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship. But the scholarships is what we would then offer to all of our master's students. Andy?
All right. So, just talking a little bit more about those scholarships, and again, everything's going to be different at each university. At the University of Alabama, we have sort of the regular scholarships that we might give. A lot of those might go to master's students. And then we have another nice thing called a fellowship. And again, terminology is going to vary. One of the best parts of my job is I actually run the fellowship program. So yesterday evening, I had the joy of sending about 70 offers out to students. This is wonderful because no one complains when you're giving them a scholarship. So for us, if we're talking about our fellowships, that's actually a full ride. So tuition, stipend, health insurance, all of that, but with no work requirement. Majority of those are going to go to our PhD students, but some of our really good master's students do actually get those as well. Now, if you're looking at what are the requirements to get one of these scholarships, we have departments that have their own scholarships where the requirement may be a particular GPA. But a lot of our scholarships, especially when we go up to our big fellowship level scholarships, those are really looking at that whole application. So GPA is in there. It's an important thing, but we're looking at, what is the research experience of that student? Have they got really good internship experience? Maybe they've had a career beforehand and they've done some really cool things. We're looking at that whole package. And so, I have a committee, 4 faculty members actually reviews each of those applications and looks at it very, very holistically. And we're trying to find the best of the best, the people who are going to go off and have amazing careers and make the University of Alabama famous. That's who I want to give money to. All right, there are some other ways that students can find support. Actually, I'm talking about the wrong slide here. So just as we've said here, funding may vary by masters and doctoral students. So in general, the doctoral students are going to get more funding. Most of our doctoral students are on a full ride. The master's students, it's going to depend on the program. It's going to depend on the college, etc. So making sure that you're contacting that admissions advisor, that program director, and asking them about this. These are the key people to talk to. All right, so other funding sources. I do want to mention, for example, Fulbright scholarships. So at the University of Alabama, we do have a few, well, we have quite a few Fulbright scholars, and we do have some from Japan. So this is a wonderful source of funding. And if you have a Fulbright scholarship, our departments will love you. They love bringing in Fulbright scholars. Also, what is becoming more and more common is international student loans, and there's a lot of different varieties here. So there's companies in the US like Prodigy, for example. There's in Japan, some of the Japanese banks give bank loans, etc. So that might be a factor, a source of funding as well. But really, making sure that you're talking to EducationUSA about these resources, because they are the folks that really know about how do Japanese students find funding. And then, a lot of universities, once you get there, there's resources as well. So some students may come without funding, and then there may be other sources of funding come up. It may be they do particularly well in classes, and a professor says, hey, I'd love to support you. A lot of our international students also work on campus. University of Alabama is a very big campus. We've got about 8,000 employees, and a lot of those are student employees. So, there's a lot of opportunities there. So even if you don't get funding, you may well be able to find something once you get there. All right, there seems to be issues with recording there. So when I do the orientation for our new grad students, one of the things I talk about is when you move from a bachelor's to a master's or a doctoral student, you're making that change from being a consumer of knowledge really to being a creator of knowledge. Your relationship with the faculty is going to be different. You're going to have smaller classes. They're going to be more interactive. Those professors are going to push you to really talk in that class. The classes are more of a conversation. So if we look at our business and engineering classes, they're more sort of, people sitting around a table and the professor sitting at the table. It might be project-based work, especially in our business programs. So you're going to get to know those professors really well. And if you don't do your reading that they ask you to do, they will know. It will be very obvious in these small classes. So making that transition to being a creator of knowledge is really important. Now, in terms of sort of mechanics, master's programs tend to be in general 1 to 2 years. On our campus, we have a number of 1-year specialized masters, for example, in our business school. So those are degrees that you can do in 2 semesters. They're really, really intense, but it is possible. And most of those are going to be classwork based, maybe with a capstone project at the end. Also, there's a lot of 2-year masters. So the master's degree that I did many, many years ago was a 2-year master's degree. I did a research-based master's where I wrote a thesis. My 2-year master's actually ended up taking about 3 years, but that's a whole other story. So, a lot of students will say, which is the best? And there's not an easy answer for that. If a student says that they want to go off and do a doctoral degree in their future, probably leaning towards a research-based master's is the best strategy. But really what I will advise students to do is to talk to the career advisors, talk to our alumni, and see for their career path, what is the best option? They are the folks that know. They're the people actually working in industry and hopefully will be the people that hire you. Doctoral programs, they're going to take longer. So we're talking 3, 4, 5, 6 years. My doctorate took 5 years, I think, just a little bit longer than my master's. Now, in the US, most universities are going to require classwork as part of that doctoral degree. I know I'm originally from England. In England, the doctoral degrees actually didn't require classwork. And actually, I did my doctorate in the US at a university that did not have a classwork requirement. So that's going to vary by university. So very often you're focused on classwork in the first couple of years and then really focusing on research in the remainder of the time. But it is going to be very research intensive. You know, in a lot of the engineering fields, especially, that student will probably be working on research for the duration of that PhD. Business tends to be more that second year, but you know, this is a big commitment doing a doctorate degree if you want to go that direction. We get a lot of students who they're not quite sure which direction they want to go. And as I say, starting a doctoral degree is a big decision. Just like with a master's degree, it requires a lot of passion, a lot of dedication, good critical thinking skills. And if you are thinking about that sort of step into a doctoral degree, making sure that your career goals are compatible with a doctoral degree. And so really thinking through that process. For me, it was a very, very rewarding process, and I wouldn't be where I am now without it. All right, I'm going to move to admission requirements now. Dina, do you want to start on this one?
Absolutely. So I think it is very important to note exactly the difference between the master's and the PhD as well when it comes to admission requirements. You will find that at the master's level, the application is very straightforward. There's a review process in place that can be a very quick review process. Most of the time, institutions will require, of course, a full application. We will require reference letters. We want to see your undergraduate transcripts, so a complete undergraduate transcript. Some universities will even tell you to upload a copy of your transcripts onto the portal. And if you're admitted, then they would require you to submit the official documents. Some universities have GRE, GMAT requirements. Some universities have that as a test optional. So for example, at Stevens Institute of Technology at this point in time, we are test optional for our Masters of Science and our Masters of Engineering programs. We are not test optional for PhD. So it is important to note that requirement. You also need to know that if the university is a test optional university and you submit the GRE and the GMAT, it will be used as part of the credentials in the evaluation of your application. So once it's submitted on a portal, essentially a lot of universities cannot unsee that document at that point in time. So it will be taken into consideration. So if the university is a test optional university and you do not want them to see your tests, make sure you do not submit your test results to them, because once you submit it, they will take it into consideration. That also means that when you are going to take the GRE and the GMAT, oftentimes students indicate the list of universities that they want ETS or GMAC to send the test scores to automatically. If the university is test optional, make sure you're not submitting that GRE or GMAT exam results automatically. Now, as international students, you will have to provide English proficiency. I think that is true of most universities in the United States. But you will find that each university has different levels. So for example, at Stevens, we only allow students to apply who have at least a TOEFL of 74 or an IELTS of 6. You will find that some universities can go up to a TOEFL of 79 and an IELTS of 6.5. And you will find that other universities can go much lower because they perhaps have an English language program on their campus that you can attend prior to matriculating into the program. So you have to do your research, like we said, as to the requirements of each of these universities. Now, once you submit your application at the graduate level, at the master's level, I'm sorry, it will be sent for review automatically. And most of the time, the review at the graduate level is done by the academic units and not necessarily by admissions advisors, most of the time. But there are plenty of situations as well where you need to check with the university as who's going to be reviewing your application. Now let's talk about the PhD program. PhD admission is a completely different type of admission. Yes, you will still have requirements that you need to submit, and you can check those requirements of each of the universities you're interested in. For example, at Stevens, for the PhD program, we like to see, or we do ask the students to submit perhaps any research that they've done in the past. We need to see perhaps a paper that you've written. We need to see all these different documents that would be additional to a master's degree application. However, when it comes to PhD admission, I do believe that at certain universities might be a little bit different, but in most universities, PhD admission is very much dependent on the faculty members, in the sense that when you're applying for a PhD program, you're essentially applying to do research with a faculty member, and you will be conducting research with a faculty member. So you need to make sure that you are figuring out what are the needs of the faculty members, what are the types of research that are being conducted at these institutions, and how does my background fit in with the research that is being done at these institutions? Is this research that I would like to end up getting involved in? One of the recommendations I make to each of my PhD applicants is to go through the Stevens website and to take a look at all the research that each of the faculty members within the department that they're interested in. What is their research? Take a look at their profile. How long have they been teaching? How long have they been conducting research? What kind of research have they done? And reach out to the ones that you might be interested in perhaps working with. Send them an email. Let them know that you are interested in, you're applying for a PhD program, and give them details about your background. Don't give them a general email that is written by ChatGPT to talk about your interest in the PhD program. Give them very specific emails about what it is in your background that will make a good candidate for them to work with or to bring them on. Keep in mind, so for example, we talked about the funding. The funding at universities such as Stevens Institute of Technology for the first 2 years, it is from the central offices. So it is actually the provost and the president that provide the funding for PhD students for the first 2 years. And then the remaining 2 years, it is actually a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship that you will be on for your funding. So while we guarantee you funding for 4 years, the funding comes from different places within the university. So you need to make sure that you have the backing of a faculty member who has research funds to be able to continue on funding you throughout your time as a PhD student. Now, I also saw a question in the chat about the type of GPA that students should be getting, or the minimum GPA. Certainly, some programs will have minimum requirements, and do check the websites. That will be made very clear in the website of the universities. However, you also have a lot of universities who do a holistic review process of your application. So that means that we do not perhaps require a minimum GRE or a minimum GPA, but it is the entire look of the application together that will make a difference for us. So we will end up seeing, okay, if this student has a little bit on the lower side, of course, you do need to have the basis of a good GPA, because I do believe, especially now that a lot of students are taking the GRE at home, for example, a lot of universities are putting more weight on the GPA. So make sure that you've done well consistently throughout your undergraduate degree or your master's degree if you're applying for PhD. But at the same time, if your GPA happens to be a little bit on the lower side, can you present a GRE that would sort of offset that lower GPA? So these are all things that the universities will end up looking at. So what I tell my students, or what I tell my applicants, is do not be afraid to submit an application, no matter what your profile looks like. First of all, the admissions advisors will work with you specifically once you submit your application or when you are in the process. They will guide you and advise you as to what kind of application they would like to see. So if your GPA perhaps is a little bit lower, the admissions advisor might say to you, you know, I think it might make a good fit for you to take the GRE and score really well on the GRE, perhaps. So these are all things that are part of our admissions requirements when we're making a decision. And again, it is most of the time the overall picture. Now, keep in mind that some programs, perhaps such as the MBA programs, a lot of times if they are being used for rankings, the GRE or the GMAT does give weight for the rankings of those programs. So you will find that some programs within a university, even though Stevens is a test optional for a Master's of Science or a Master's of Engineering, we are not test optional for the MBA. We do require students to provide the GRE or the GMAT test scores for that. Okay.
Yeah, that gives me a nice segue in, because we're one of those places that we're test optional, but our MBA requires the GRE because of rankings. And we're in terms of admission test scores, University of Alabama is quite complicated. I've got about 150 different programs, and about 10 of them require GREs. The others they don't, and each of those that requires the GRE requires a slightly different score. So their job is to make my job hard. I do want to emphasize with the PhD just how important that sort of holistic process is. So when I'm looking at PhD applications, I'm really looking at that full package. But if a student has done something exceptional, so for example, for me, one of the important things is if as a master's student, they're a first author on a peer-reviewed paper, then a lot of things like the GPA really don't matter to me, because that student is already doing the sort of thing that we want them to do as a PhD student. They've already done it. They've already shown that they can do it. And so those sorts of students are really going to get, they're going to really get more of a opportunity in the admissions process. So they're going to be considered more strongly. We do also have some programs that, you know, if you're applying for a PhD, do actually require you to identify an advisor as part of the application process. So for example, our biology program, if in that statement of purpose you have not identified a PhD advisor, they will not consider that application. So again, really making sure you're talking with that program director to make sure you know what the requirements are. And then just one other thing, you know, that very often you're going to be sending that email to a faculty member. This is the first impression that that faculty member is going to have of you. So making sure that that email is written very, very well, making sure that if you have a professor who can read it over, a friend who can read it over, you know, this is something, again, that's their first look at you. And it's really, you know, what I tell students, it's not a place to ask about funding at the start. Don't start an email by talking about funding. Start that email by talking about what you're passionate about and how the University of Alabama, for example, can help you achieve your goals and how you can help us with our research as well. And very often, if there's a good fit, the conversation naturally moves towards funding. Our funding at the University of Alabama is very different. We don't have a nice central pool. All of that funding is coming from the academic departments from the start. So convincing those departments that you are the person they should fund is really your job. All right, Dina.
So we wanted to tell you a little bit about each of our universities as well. So you understand what kind of university we come from. And I think it is important, we're going to be talking to you about things that you should probably be looking into as well when you're considering other universities. So Stevens Institute of Technology is what we call a STEM research university. We are located in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across the river from New York City. So the pictures that you see here, the picture on the far right of this, the far left of the screen, is indeed the full campus. And if you see those towers there, those are our dormitories that our students stay in. So we are right on the Hudson River bank. So right across the river, what you see is actually New York City. We're about 15 minutes away from New York City. And I think that for us has served us really, really well when we talk about the employability of our students. So every single student, as we said, when they come in as an international student, they complete the degree in the United States, they have the ability to do CPT after 2 semesters of being in the United States. So if you're doing a master's degree, you need to complete 2 semesters and then you do CPT. And then post-completion of the program, you have the OPT or optional practical training that is available to you. And because our programs are STEM designated programs, you have the ability to work in the United States up to 3 years. So it's a 12 months plus the 24 months extension. So I think the employability of our students has been wonderful. Right now, Stevens Institute of Technology has a 97.5 employability rate across the board. But many of our programs actually have an employability rate of 100% or 99% within 3 months of graduation. So I do believe that our location has served us really well. Now, the other thing is that Stevens Institute of Technology, we were founded in 1870, so we've had a long history behind us, but we were founded by a family of inventors. So innovation and entrepreneurship has been in the blood of Stevens Institute of Technology and has been in our DNA since the beginning. And this is something that we truly pride ourselves on at this point. Our student body is about 9,000 students. So, and unlike a lot of other universities in the United States, we actually have more master's and PhD students on our campus than we do undergraduate students. So right now we have about 4,075 undergraduate students, and the rest are all master's and PhD students. So certainly the services that we offer at the undergraduate level are also offered even more and emphasized at the graduate level as well. We are ranked overall number 76 amongst all universities in the United States. However, most of our program rankings are the above 50. Our School of Business is ranked number 53 by US News and World Report, and our computer science and our data science programs and so on and so forth are all fairly high. We are often ranked first or second in the New Jersey area as well. So, Andy, please go ahead.
What, was there anything else you wanted from this?
So that's basically that in a nutshell. This is basically it. But when we talked about, I do want to mention really quickly, we talked about loans. My colleague Andrew also mentioned some of the loans that you can take to fund your program. And I do think that when you're looking at a very high employability rate of an institution, and with the, with the average salaries that their students are seeing, it becomes much easier for repayment of that loan as well. Now, some of the lenders that we work with, Andrew and I both work with Prodigy Finance, or they have offered loans to many of our graduate students. When you take a look at Prodigy Finance, for example, what they do is that they offer loans, especially to students that are going to institutions where they know that the students will be able to secure jobs and will be able to secure a very good salary. I mean, for our computer science students, or for our data science students, or for our business intelligence and analytics students, or our information systems students, the average salary is over $100,000 a year, and that is post-graduation. So it's really for students. These are the average salaries that are coming in for students who do not have very much work experience, or perhaps have a summer internship rather than years of work experience. Andy?
All right. Well, the University of Alabama is in a very different location to Stevens. We're about 1,600 kilometers to the southwest, I guess. So you can get a direct flight between our places, but it's a long day. So the University of Alabama is the flagship public state research university for the state of Alabama. So we were founded in 1831. We're an R1 research university. We have about 40,000 students on campus, and about nowadays about close to 6,000 of those are grad students. About 150 different programs, about half of those are masters, half of those are PhDs. And then we've got a very robust international student population, about 80 different countries represented. And then I think, one of the wonderful things I like about working at the University of Alabama is we have this amazing campus. So it's about 1,300 acres. If I were to walk around the periphery of the campus, it's about 7-kilometer walk. So it's a huge area. And it's just a beautiful scenic place. I take joy in being on the campus every single day. Now, what are we known for? We have amazing alumni who are leaders in industry, technology, literature, the arts, entertainment, and sports. We're very well known for world-class athletic programs at the University of Alabama. Our main athletic stadium is one of the top 10 largest in the world. It is huge. It is amazing. We have highly ranked business programs, amazing materials science programs. We just bought a scanning microscope that's one of the most powerful in the world, for example. And then just specializing in things like water research as well, which is something which is applicable to pretty much everyone in the world. So that's one of our big areas. We're also very centrally located in the southeast of the US. Alabama is a hub for auto industry. So just 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right now, we have a very large, we have the North American Mercedes-Benz plant. A little bit further away, we have the NASA research and manufacturing facility, the Marshall Space Flight Center. And that has created sort of a nucleus for the aerospace industry. So there's actually more people working in aerospace in Alabama than any other state in the country. So in terms of sort of the industry, there's a lot going on. But we're down in the deep South. We love to talk about Southern hospitality, how welcoming we are. Again, I take great pleasure in being here every day. All right, questions. I'm actually going to shut down the Zoom so I can actually see the Q&A. All right, hold on one second. There we go. All right, I can actually see what's going on my screen now. Have you been looking at any of these, Dina, as we've been going along?
I have, and I actually answered some of them, but I do think that there are some really good questions that have come in, Andy. So how about I read them out to us, and then we can perhaps discuss them. How much is GPA important to apply for a PhD student, and how much is GPA suitable at least? So essentially, I think we talked about that a little bit, and we talked about it a lot, I think, in the sense that, you know, it's really, we do a holistic review process. But Andy, did you want to discuss that a little bit more?
Yeah, it depends on what's in that application package. It's going to depend on each student. You know, I mentioned, you know, if a student has published a paper already and they want to go into a PhD program, I actually don't care too much about their GPA because they've done amazing stuff. And so, you know, that to me is now far more important than a GPA. Now, I do still want to see a good GPA.
Yes. But I do think that also, I think one of the things we need to keep in mind is that we see a lot of international applicants. So Andy talked about how many how many countries are represented within their international student body. And at Stevens, we have a representation of 54 different countries on our student body. So in that case, I think what is important to note is that not all countries give GPAs in the same way. So we do know that certain universities as well are tougher graders at the undergraduate level. So we recognize that, and we will take that into consideration as well. The second question is, what is the most important document? Achievement letters or letters of recommendation or others? I personally would say it's the full package. But Andy, what about you? What would you say?
It is. I get this question a lot, and it's like, no, they're all important. Otherwise, we wouldn't ask for them.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It is important to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward in everything that you are submitting to us. Because again, we do not have the luxury of getting to know each and every one of you individually. So the package that you're presenting us is the package that we will get to know you through. So that is important to note. Another question is, Andy, before doing TA, do universities offer training for students?
I know we certainly do. So if a student comes in, you know, and they're going to be serving as a TA, that can be kind of scary the first time. And so we have, once a student arrives, even before they do the orientation, there's a 2-day GTA training workshop that everyone has to go through. And then throughout that first semester, there is continuous professional development for our TAs. We want to make sure that they're confident in the classroom, you're happy in the classroom, and you can do well.
Excellent.
I sorry to jump in because of the time. Well, let's do 2 more questions.
Okay.
Let's do the very last one. I have a question. When being as an assistant, how do they work with the faculty members? It is also required to future careers. The very last one, yeah.
The last one.
Yeah, so it's the last part of the last question.
Yeah,
so is that sort of teaching assistant or a research assistant? Because that can be different.
Yeah. Well, we can address both.
We can.
Yeah. So universities offer, as we mentioned before, the RA and TA. RA is a research assistantship, TA is a teaching assistantship. And then at places like Stevens, we offer a GA, which is a graduate assistantship. So the RA assistantship is basically you are going to be conducting research along with a faculty member. So that is important to note that you will have a research requirement tied to that assistantship. In terms of a teaching assistantship, a lot of times our faculty members, especially when they teach larger classes, for example, or if they are themselves research professors and are still teaching, they require teaching assistants. So they require graduate students to join their work and perhaps do things like grading of exams, perhaps do things like mentoring the students if need be, if mentoring is needed. That kind of work would be required of a teaching assistant. Now GAs for us, so for the graduate assistantship, you are essentially doing more administrative work with offices and with faculty members. And Andy, is that same for you?
Oh yeah, very much the same. I also want to add though, you know, because the person who asked this question also said, is it required for future careers? And I'm going to add a slightly different dimension to that. So I've had a lot of doctoral and master's students myself, and my research is in the oil industry. And so I actually work with oil companies. A lot of my research is funded by the oil companies. And when those students are working with me in my lab, they're also working with the people from those oil companies. Mm-hmm. They get fantastic work experience actually as a research assistant. And very often, that's where they end up working because they've got to know the people at those companies through my lab, and that leads to wonderful job opportunities.
Okay. The very last question from Mr. Keita. Is it necessary to visit professors at universities before taking the entrance examinations?
So I think this is, this is mostly for PhD, I believe, correct? I think the question was revolving around PhD, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, it is. Yeah.
It is, right? So for us, I would say there's a couple of things I will say here. Again, personally visiting might not be necessary. However, you do need to connect with faculty members at the PhD level. So you need to send out that email in the beginning, and then perhaps if there is dialogue or if there is interest, then it's important to set up perhaps Zoom meetings with the faculty members that you're interested in working with. But I will say that some universities will offer PhD students the ability to visit campus and to visit with the faculty members ahead of time as well. So at Stevens Institute of Technology, once a year, we do a doctoral weekend. And within the doctoral weekend, we will invite international students or all PhD students to come and visit Stevens Institute of Technology and to connect with faculty member and to look at the research other students are doing and that kind of thing. And we will fund students to come for that weekend. So we will pay up to, for example, $1,500, so $1,500 for your flight, and we will put you up in a hotel for 4 days. Some institutions will do that ahead of time. So that might be a good opportunity for you as well and a good time to personally meet one-on-one with the faculty members. But certainly the contact will need to be made ahead of time.
Yeah. Post-COVID, it's become far easier, far more normal to do a Zoom conversation. And, you know, I know many of the faculty I'm working with now, you know, for their PhD students, they're just routinely just jumping on Zoom with them for an hour and chatting, you know, so you can really actually get to know someone pretty well before they even arrive on campus. So that's, you know, that's really, you know, if we're going to try and look at a positive from COVID, that's a positive. That's normalized, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I will mention one thing quickly for PhD applicants, because it seems like we have a number of interested students in PhD programs here. you need to keep in mind that most universities will ask you to commit to the university by April 15, which means that because this is the essentially the date that all universities will follow for funded PhD students. So it is important to keep that in mind. It is very important then to also go backwards and make sure that you are submitting your application, complete application, by the deadline that is presented, which most of the time, if the university is asking you to submit by April 15 or to give them your decision by April 15, that means that most of the time their deadlines are in December or January. Yeah. So there's a 4 months period there. So you have to make sure that it's a fairly early process for PhD applicants versus the master's applicants.
Yeah, for us, most of our PhD programs, they've closed their admissions by now. It's yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Andrew. We still have like 40 minutes. I'm sorry, we still have 40 people online, and they might have more questions. If they have more questions, is it possible for them to address to, is it possible for us to address to your email address?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. それでは、ウェビナーの終わりになるんですけれども、皆様まだ質問等があるかなと思います。今日のディーナさんとアンドリューさんの、メールアドレスをこちらから、流したいと思います。その前にちょっと、録画を止めますね。